Hi, and welcome to Books in Action. My name is Larry Petricaro, and I have with me tonight two of the librarians from South Orange, Melissa Kopecki and JP. I just met JP a little bit ago, so I can't tell you his last name, but it'll probably come out sometime during the show. We're going to talk a little bit about libraries and books and some of the ways that these things have changed. And I thought that it might be sort of one way to start would be to just see if we could get just a rough idea of the origin and the driving force behind this whole system of public libraries. So, not to go into that too deeply, Melissa, but maybe just as sort of an overview and a place to start. Perhaps you could
Yeah,
express
see,
a
Larry,
thought on that.
you're going to put me on the spot here because I'm not that much of a historian, but I love to talk about libraries. So, the United States has a library system that's kind of unlike any other system in the world, and that is, and this was during the Carnegie era, where it really became an institution that was decided was important and essential to all communities. So it became a conscious effort to build public libraries and make them available to every single citizen. In a lot of other countries in the world, public libraries, well, or libraries can be more like sort of in the country club mode where certain people are entitled, or at least in a club mode where you join and you become a member, or they're available to researchers, or so it's a very American idea, and I have found, as you probably have, that people who've come here from other countries are delighted to discover this system.
Yeah, in Belleville, I work also in Belleville Public Library. We have a large immigrant population, a lot of people from South America, and they're always, when they come in and realize that everything that we do is free, it's kind of a shock. It's like, wow, we're not used to this, I guess, wherever they were from. And they're pretty pleased with it, I would say, because we offer like a lot of culture, it's a great place to come if you're an immigrant because you can like immerse yourself in the best of American culture too, which is another uniquely American.
Plus, it's almost essential to the American dream that people can take control of their own destiny, and there's an awful lot of people you'll find in an awful lot of important places who say, if I couldn't go to the library and do this, if I couldn't educate myself or find the space or make the connections or whatever, I wouldn't have gotten, up the next step as I am now. So that's kind of a very cool thing. It's very fun to be part of something that, and actually the one other thing I wanted to say in terms of libraries and internationally, the UN actually does obviously a lot of work with developing countries and tries to figure out what are the essential things to help a country, get get to the next step. And obviously you need the basics first. You need water, you need sanitation. But one of the key ingredients, and the UN has written a report on libraries saying that they are an essential part of forming a stable and educated community. So it's not just the school system, but the libraries become a part of it because they reach people beyond the school system. So they can partner with, but they can also reach, adults and everybody else who might not fit into the school system.
Well, that's sort of that's interesting. It sort of ties in with something else I was thinking about. A lot of times we tend to think of libraries as just books, but from what the two of you are describing, it's a lot more than books. So if you were to take a look at the kind of different functions that the library provides, would you be able to categorize them, or just if you can't, put them in nice little categories, kind of what are some of the types of things that we're talking about?
Well, it's kind of interesting because the American Library Association, which does a lot of studying on libraries nationwide, used to describe like 12 service functions of a library with, early education, maybe cultural, community group, sort of a community meeting point and stuff. And now that's up to, I think, like 17 definitions. So libraries are actually serving more functions than they used to. What would you say were
I
some
would
of the
say
key ones?
the key ones would be we deal in information, whether it be in the medium of books or electronically. On any form of information is what we deal with. Also, recreation, but not just any type of recreation, but maybe a more like educated cultural, like something that brings us all up as recreation, not just just the base, just having a good time, but it's the kind of recreation that maybe I don't know, how would you describe it?
You're
Yeah.
talking cultural.
Right.
Providing cultural.
So something to
Program.
provide some growth or some progress.
Yeah, and
or
also
some change.
as a hub of the community, I would say those would be my three. If I had to break it down to three things, we deal with information, recreation, and community love.
That community hub, though, must encompass a lot of different kinds of things. What are perhaps some of the types of programs that might fall under that kind of broad category?
Well, not even necessarily programs, but just
Okay.
a place for people to be. Programs, though, again, going along with the recreation or the culture or the education, the information, that's all types of programs that we do, right?
But I think increasingly so, libraries as public space are just becoming essential, because if you look at 100 years ago, there were places for people to gather. There was a village green. There certainly wasn't the blatant commercialism that's prevalent now. And so if you look for not only a non-commercial public space, but a freedom of speech, freedom of thought, kind of public space, there really isn't anything that fills that need in communities without there being a library there. So whether it's providing a place for an individual or for people to meet. So
Right.
yeah, we run a lot of programming, but if there's a good tutoring program in a town, then libraries don't need to provide that, but they can often provide the space for things like that to happen.
Oh, can I give an example? This Saturday in Belleville Library, we are hosting open mic. And so basically what we're doing is just giving a whole bunch of musicians in town who don't have anyone else to play for and don't have anywhere else to play, come in and play some songs. Or I have a lot of poets in town who like to write really good poetry, and they're not published, they don't have anywhere to say it. They come and we all hang out and we do that stuff together, and that's another.
This
Really
is
hip.
another piece about librarians, is not only do we deal with information, but we also have a thing about organization. And I can be, a really scatty, sloppy, and disorganized person, but something about me still likes to put order to things. And I think because of that, we can I think librarians and libraries are particularly good at sort of taking the pulse of their communities and finding the places
Good libraries.
where, well, that's true, but let's assume that
Yeah,
most
we're all
libraries
good.
are at least partly good. And finding what, where you can support something that's already happening and where you
Right,
need to
right. I see
actually
what you're
make
saying.
something happen. So, and that is sort of just like organizing materials. It's organizing
different way. Oh, that's
the
really
activities or the resources available to the people in a community.
Well, it sort of sounds like what you're saying is that the libraries have become sort of the village green and public forum of yesteryear in a way. I mean, a place where you get together, exchange ideas.
I
Absolutely.
certainly feel
Absolutely.
like that. I mean, I
Absolutely.
definitely have seen in my time as a librarian, and I'm actually a late life librarian in that I've come to it after lots of other careers, and I'm very happy to be one. That even in the time that I've been a librarian, I think that need for space has grown, for that kind of space. I've seen an increased desire for that kind of space.
So an increased use of the library as public space as opposed to the library as book repository.
Exactly. In many
Although,
ways.
yeah, I think, I mean, in South Orange in the past year, our circulation was
Yeah, that's
up.
not to say, yeah, circulation is the
Incredibly
word that
up.
we use.
So-
Circulation is the word we use when we're, checking books in and out. And, yeah, that same thing in my library. We have increased 50% from 2007 summer, or 2006 summer, 2007 summer. So not only are we doing all these new things, but we're also checking out more books than we used to. So yeah, it's terrific, and especially if you look at how many tax dollars you get, a whole lot out of every tax dollar. Compared to where all the other places your taxes are going.
Good value for the money.
Yeah, definitely,
Well,
absolutely.
Let me jump back to books again. We were talking about all the different things the library does. But if we go back to the books, which is something that many of us may tend to think of first when we think of libraries, although I
that's
think we may
okay.
have to
Yeah, that's
stop.
fine.
We may have to start thinking the way you guys think. But have you seen any changes over a period of time in what's popular? Do things go in cycles? I mean, especially, or for example, with children's books. JP, you're involved with children's books. Is it always the same ones? Is there a cyclical shift?
Well, it seems like every season people want to check out season books. It's crazy. No, I'm just. It's like every winter they want to check out books about the winter. No, no, I see what you're saying. Maybe I've been in it not so long that I can gauge that. I don't know. I've only been a librarian for 2 years, technically. I worked in the Belleville Library for 12 years, though, so I've been around it.
Well, I'm kind of curious about that kind of thing. I mean, is there been a children's book that's been popular for the
Absolutely.
forever?
I mean, yeah, that's.
Is there been a genre that things change? I mean, I had a friend who told me that one of the things that she liked about the older children's books as opposed to the newer children's books, and if I remember this correctly, her point was that the older children's books dealt with death, tragedy, and things of that more matter-of-factly than the newer ones, which tended to, the way she
Which is
described
maybe
tend to
just like a
hide it.
reflection of our culture, just the way we all deal with it. When people look back 300 years on our literature, that's probably how they're going to judge our culture. So that would make sense that books, 100 years ago dealt with things a little differently than we deal with them now, right? And not only just in death, but maybe in, what's a good time, anything, any issue probably. I mean, that's what I would think.
Well, and there are trends within books, and I think every library needs somebody who's following the trends. There'll be, certain subject matters even that are interesting to a particular age, or, the big thing now is graphic novels, which are
Comic books.
pretty, well, sort of reincarnation of comic books. So, yeah, there's lots of trends to follow, and more to come because the amount of formats in which books come is expanding.
And also, one other thing can I say, one thing that librarians also are really good at is finding, sure there's trends, but then there's those other people that maybe don't want to be involved in that trend or are not interested in it. I think librarians are really great at getting a few things for those people too. So we have something for everybody when they come in. In many cases that might be the only place that they have to go to get what they're looking for. That's not a trendy kind of thing they can get in Barnes & Noble.
Well, speaking of trends, the one trend that I did notice is that we're going to have to take a break.
Oh.
We're running out of time,
Shame.
so we'll be back in about a minute, and I'd like to continue that conversation.
Faster than searching the World Wide Web. More inspiring than a half-cap mocha latte. Able to answer any question with insight and detail. This superhero of knowledge can find the answer to any question no matter what the problem. And she works in your neighborhood at your public library. When you need to know, get to know your library. Log on to njlibraries.org.
Hi, and welcome back to Books in Action. I'm Larry Petricaro, and I'm here with Melissa Kopecki and JP Percaro. In the interim, I managed to learn his last name. We were talking about some of the trends that have occurred. We were talking a little bit about children's books, whether some have always stayed popular or things change with, as times change. What about genres? do genres, the interest, I mean, if we, however you define a genre, whether it's, you know, for little kids, maybe a genre is dinosaur books, or things of that nature. I mean, you know, I can remember back when I went through all those phases. You know, I think I knew every dinosaur there was, then every early mammal there was, then this, then that, then the other thing, and you work your way up through. Are there genres that have stayed popular, become popular, or are they always the same, or is that sort of a cyclical little issue as well?
I would think that, yeah, it's cyclical in the sense that certain things will be more trendy, or publishers will decide they're more profitable maybe, and that's what you see more of. There's certain things that'll happen all the time. The classics will always get reissued because anything before 1920 is copyright free too, which
Yeah, so any
goes
publisher
into
can
a
publish
whole
it. Yeah.
electronic information thing. But I think some things will never change. I think
Like a
kids
good
will
story.
always cut their
Yeah.
teeth on dinosaur books
Oh.
too. And, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, even as we're getting old and losing some of the things we used to know, I think we'll all remember like Stegosaurus and maybe even Megatherium. So
Oh, that's your favorite dinosaur.
that's
That
my
was-
favorite
That's
early
it.
mammal.
Right. It looks like a sloth, right?
The giant sloth. Yeah.
Aha, I remember.
So, see, I managed to work that
Yeah,
into the
yeah.
conversation.
I love it.
So I think it's both. I think, but to take your question and revert to what we were talking about before, I think there's been more of an explosion in, like, there aren't really any new genre except graphic novels, I would say, which is hitting
Except
all
that-
different
that's
levels.
classically American.
And it is,
That's one of
got
America's
roots
art
that
forms.
go back,
Yeah.
right, forever. But formats are exploding incredibly. I mean, there has always been a debate about whether an audiobook, you know, does that really count? And certainly, you know, for teachers, if you assign a book to students and they go home and listen to it, does that count as having read the book? Which I can understand for a lot of different reasons. That might be defined differently. I think you can't deny that there are different ways of experiencing a book, but you're still getting are you looking?
Yeah, no,
because
can I?
have
No,
this?
yeah, she's got an audiobook here if you want to see it.
Oh.
But no, can I tell my audiobook story?
Please.
Lemony Snicket, who wrote Series of Unfortunate Events, big movie with Jim Carrey, great book series. He released a set of audiobooks for each book. But at the end of I sent you that email, I don't know if you got it. At the end of every audiobook, they had a song by the actual author who started a band, and it was sort of based on the book. So that's a whole nother
So it
thing that you
added
got
in.
out of it. Yeah, and then they just released an album with all the songs on it. So
Oh, and that wouldn't have been in the book.
exactly. Oh, and it's such a good album. It's so good. It's so good.
And here's my favorite new format, which is an audiobook on MP3 player, but
Oh, neat.
like this is just so perfect for libraries.
Yeah, all you do is
You know,
press play.
Teeny little thing. You stick
just-
your earphones in
you-
and you press
You
play.
don't need to have to know how to use a computer, so
Yeah.
anyone can just go in, pop it in. You don't need a CD player or anything. That's it.
You know, this
Terrific.
is, you know, we're talking about genres. I mean, when I see these things in iPods, it reminds me of the stuff that was you know, basically the stuff of science fiction not so many years ago. And I remember one of the stories that I read, the books that I read, they came across these little, like, square-type devices, like iPod size, which held all this information. And back then, it was sort of inconceivable.
And now you find them in libraries all the
Now
time.
they're all over the place, isn't it?
Right, and just look at, I mean, over the past 2 years, the amount of memory available on a flash drive. And there's something we check out at South Orange, talking about different uses of a library. I
Check
mean,
out
we have
memory?
flash drives
Yeah,
that people,
yeah.
yes.
You play. We really do check
Yeah.
out memory. Just plug it in in the computer, and
Yeah, I wish I could get more memory.
There you go.
It just doesn't work that way. Well,
Yeah.
how,
Maybe still
Well,
in our
it does.
lifetime, we'll
Yeah.
be able
Yeah,
to put the
that's
chip in
right,
right
that's
in.
well, with all these kinds of things, I mean, you know, and still reverting back to books, you have a collection of books. How do you decide what books you're going to buy? I mean, what makes you decide to buy?
there's a whole bunch. There's so many different.
There's a format question too, because, I mean, that was a nice lead-in, because you're deciding what you're going to buy, and you're deciding, in what formats you need it to. And just like your personal collection at home, you're not buying videos anymore, you're buying DVDs, and so there's changing formats, which is the lovely thing about books, is the format doesn't change. And in spite of
Books will never go out of
audiobooks
style.
and ebooks
Yeah,
and
definitely not.
Google book search, there's going to be regular paper books around for a really long time, because they are actually the most durable format.
Also, rewinding all the way back to what you said before about the librarians having a good pulse in the community when we're choosing what we're putting in. That's like one of the main things you're thinking about, is your community. What does your community need? What does South Orange need? Maplewood.
When you talk about that, you're talking about what type of books they want to read, or
And
what kind of
what
devices?
what is devices, books that, leaving aside the medium even, we're deciding what does this, community need as far as mediums go, right? I mean, I have a different collection in Belleville, because I have a different community in Belleville than South Orange and Maplewood have, because we're serving different needs, just looking at what formats, what type of medium people are, familiar with, or what they can use. Some communities might not. Well, that's great for everybody. See, she brought a really good thing. That's great for everybody.
But the other thing is, collectively, libraries become very powerful too, and they're aware of that. So, I mean, you can have it in a really practical sense. I can target, or we can target, what we're purchasing towards the community of South Orange. But, we don't assume that means everybody wants the same thing. So it's always, you're playing a balance, and you're always going to have somebody who wants something that, I mean, we can't purchase everything. So you're going to have somebody who wants something out of that loop. But the amazing thing about libraries collectively is somebody has that. So if we can get that for somebody, which we pretty basically can, it may take a while.
And it usually doesn't even take a while. I mean, we can get anything in like a week. I mean, pretty much. I mean, it's wild. It's wild. It's wild. You walk into a library and you need something. If they don't have it in that building, they will get it for you. They will get it for you from somewhere.
Well, I can appreciate
For free,
that, but
usually. For free, usually.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
But going back to the thought of what you would buy, like somebody's interested in astronomy, somebody's interested in anthropology. You go to the library and you've got this vast range of, you got all the fiction, and then you got stuff that goes from 000 to 999, right? Well, how do you, when you take the pulse of the community, or is it a more personal choice that it's sort of a hunch that you think, here's a new book about Neanderthal man, we're going to get that for South Orange, or here's a new novel by James Patterson or somebody, we're going to get that for South Orange. How do you make those decisions?
It is a balance, and I think every library has a written, fancy name for it, collection development policy, because you do want guidelines and you want some consistency, and you don't want to be swayed necessarily by
your
whim,
own interest as a librarian.
But you want to make a place for people's areas of expertise too. So you will find almost every public library will have some little part of the collection that's developed really nicely, because somebody either loved that in particular or just knew that subject matter better. And that serves all libraries, because somebody's going to benefit from having that material available. But so there are guidelines, and it's demand is some of it. Some of it is a balance. If you're looking at subject areas, you want to cover everything in the level in which it's needed, because there's a real difference between, if your the high school commonly assigns reports on certain things, then you want a lot of material that's going to cover that kind of subject area, particularly if they're being asked to do it, whether, through books and through online. But again, your collection development policy is going to help you determine what electronic materials you're buying as well, what databases you're subscribing to for your population. So you do need to know the use. So you need to know your student population. You need to know, your serious kind of researchers within the community.
And which
you
we
need
don't,
to know the trends in
sorry to
general
interrupt,
rating. Go
which
ahead.
we don't even just do. We're not just making this decision just as like we're huddled up together as librarians. I work very closely with the school system on what they're going to need in the future, what they need right now. I work closely with a couple of organizations in town that to find out what they need. So we're not just just guessing or just trying to follow this policy, but we really are like digging in.
So in a way, it's very similar to how we were talking about developing programming or services. It's sort of like fitting the needs and constantly being aware of, what's working, what's not, how you need to shift stuff. Because you may find over time that there's an interest in a genre or a particular subject area that's just moving away now. Plus, you have the responsibility to make sure you have good information, which means going back through it. Sometimes if there's new medical research, then you might, have stuff on your shelves that's actually inaccurate, and that's even more important than what you're buying
the
new.
planet Pluto, right?
Well, that went back and forth for
yeah.
a long time. Like, is that?
That may not be
How many
yet,
planets do we
Yeah,
have?
yeah.
So
I haven't gotten rid of my Pluto books yet. I just recently, though, just got rid of the end of my USSR stuff. I held on to it for a long while. But my last East Germany book, I said, I just don't think people need this anymore. They've got so much information in the new books about Germany. So
I don't think it'll come back.
Yeah.
But that you raised a point I had never even considered, and that's I'm asking you how you buy things. How do you dispose of things? I mean, I guess it's what you're saying is things get outdated. Now, when you dispose them, do you destroy them or do you just?
It depends on the community. I know in my town we sell a lot of stuff, or I give them away to other libraries that might be interested. I just didn't necessarily get rid. I'm limited by space in my room, so there was a couple of books that I didn't need anymore because I just didn't have the space for it. So this town organization in town is it's a therapeutic school. I let them come in and take a few things that they thought would be good for their school. And now I have some room, and
librarians
they're still using it.
truly,
So it's great, yeah.
Truly love the materials, so we're
Yeah,
always
it's so
gonna try
hard to get rid of
find-
anything. It's so difficult.
It's going to be, we try to find good homes for them. Then again, if it's inaccurate materials, we want to make sure, it doesn't see the light of day. It would only be seen by somebody who's taking in context of it being outdated material, which is a whole nother
Another
subject.
day, yeah, we can go on.
Well, we're unfortunately, I've been just told we only have about a minute left, so, or by now it's even less, so I guess we're not going to be able to go on much further. But this has been very interesting. So we may not have found out exactly how you dispose of books, but I think we're going to find out how we dispose.
It's a
of them.
mystery.
So, we're going to have to bring this to an end. But Melissa, thank you. JP, thank you, and thank you for joining us on Books in Action. See you in the